I spent almost a decade in the US Navy, right? And talk about a leadership boot camp, right? On just how things should and shouldn't be done, right? And I can remember the very first time I was put into a leadership position. And unfortunately, one of the biggest mistakes that I made and all almost new leaders make. So in this video, I'm gonna actually show you what this one mistake is, how you can go about avoiding it and why it even matters. And then finally, what's the one step that you can take to be able to overcome this mistake that you're gonna run into. Hey guys, my name's Nate. And here at First Up Leader, our goal is to provide you the tools and the roadmap in order to be successful in whatever space you are as a new leader. Okay, so what is this number one mistake that everyone makes whenever they become a new leader? So for me, right, going back, I was in the US Navy and I had the opportunity to serve in my first leadership role, right? And I was super excited. I was ready to get started and I made the crucial mistake of saying yes. And so that is actually the biggest mistake that you could possibly run into. Is all first time leaders run into the pitfall of saying yes to every single opportunity, right? And that results in them over committing. Okay, so why is this a problem, right? Now, yes has the ability to be a great thing, right? But unfortunately, whenever you say yes, right, you're always saying no to something else. And this is a very huge mistake that happens with these first-time leaders because they're very gung-ho. They want to satisfy, maybe their new boss they still have, right? They have a new team, whatever it might be. And so they tend to overcommit themselves in various different ways. So I'm gonna actually walk through 3 ways that this actually happens and some ways that you can get around it here. Okay, so when I was in that leadership role in the Navy, right? Like I said, I wanted to do the best thing, right? I wanted to make sure I was there for anyone that I was supposed to be serving, and that resulted in me saying yes to a lot of things. And so I actually was in charge of a department that needed a lot of help. And so I had, my own thoughts, I had my boss's thoughts, right? I had the issues in the past, I had things I wanted to do in the future, right? And so that big mistake was I was saying yes to all incoming requests. So every such way, can we do this, right? I was saying yes to that. And the first thing that you really have to decide whenever you're getting into a new leadership role, right, and you're trying to not overcommit yourself, is to look at your meeting participation. Okay, and so by that, right, that is both your participation, I don't think I spelled that right, participation, close enough. That is both your participation and also anyone that possibly works for your participation, right? So make sure if you're not already in this mindset that when you think about meetings as a whole, and there's a lot you can go into with just how meetings are set up, but really you got to start with who is actually at that meeting. And so a lot of times what will happen is you'll be in a new role, right? Especially maybe if you've never worked in this department before or whatever, and they will automatically start throwing you into all kinds of different meetings, right? And maybe at first you don't feel like you have the ability to actually say something, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But, right, before long, you will find yourself in every kind of different meeting possible, from your department meetings to maybe external meetings to your own internal meetings you want to have, to just, your one-on-ones above, your one-on-ones with, your direct reports, company-wide meetings possibly. And very quickly you can see that your calendar is starting to fill up with all of these meetings that you may or may not have very little control of what happens in those meetings. And then on top of that, right, what meetings are already happening that maybe shouldn't have ever happened to begin with. And then, like I said, the participation at that meeting. So even if you are sent a bunch of meeting invites at the beginning and you need to, answer them as maybe a yes or a tentative to start with, I would start to look at your week very quickly in those first couple of weeks and identify as many meetings as possible that you are actually participating in, and that either A, you don't need to participate in, either, let's look at it here. Either one, you're gonna look at meetings that do not need to exist at all. If they're ones that you have the ability to control to start with, get rid of them, right? It might seem kind of countercultural, there might be a little bit of pushback, but if there doesn't seem to be real value, especially after you've attended them a few times, go ahead and do your purge, right? The next one is going back to who's actually participating in that meeting. So for you, if it's ones that, like I said, once again, kind of maybe were there from the previous leader or anything like that, another issue that we run into is this meeting bloat, right? And that could be as far as, hey, it's maybe you have a team meeting, which is great on a Monday, but then you have a very duplicated effort meeting on another day of the week, or maybe every day of the week, right? Now, stand-ups and all those things are different things we would talk about, at a different time. But if you have what seems to be duplicate team meetings like this, then once again, going back to that purging, that might be a possibility. The other piece is, how are those meetings being structured and who's actually being involved in there? And a lot of times, right, we tend to bring a lot more extra individuals to that meeting that we don't need to have. So if you have a team meeting, right, and then let's say there's a meeting with an external partner, right? Unless there's a specific reason that you're bringing a direct report with a meeting that you're going to, neither one of you should be going to the same meeting. So if it's an external meeting, then the number of individuals from your own team should be as limited as possible, right? And this varies, right? Maybe you lead a team of 2, maybe you lead a team of 100, right? It varies, but ultimately, right, when you have external meetings, 1 to 2 top representatives for specific reasons. Now, like I said, they might have a reason, and there might be a reason that you need to be on there from a leadership perspective, in the same way that your boss might need to be on there from another leadership perspective. But in general, right, we find so often that, hey, I'm having a sales meeting here, right? And unless it's that big type of sales that you're trying to close, and maybe you're going to be on it to help close it out, you only need the one individual that's part of that, right? Or maybe, working in supply chain, right? If there's a supply chain meeting, right, who is your supply chain individual that's going to be, discussing that with maybe the cross-functional teams? And if that individual is not able to attend that meeting and actually provide value back to you, then that is a totally different issue that needs to be addressed. Because the way that they go to a meeting and then be able to communicate that back to you and your team to what needs to be done is a very needed skill that is lacking as well. So ultimately, have one individual, right, that is assigned to do that, and make sure you just put in the framework of what the expectation is to come back from that meeting. So often the reason we run into this meeting participation problem is that we think that it's easier just to invite more individuals, right? Or maybe that person will have an idea, which possibly is true, but you have to start thinking that meetings, right, aren't actually, in a positive sense, bringing revenue into your team, your company, whatever, right? But it's actually costing you money, which might need to be there as an investment, right? Meetings aren't bad. Bad meetings are bad, but good meetings that have the right number of participations and the right structure are good investments, but they still cost money, right? They still cost a salary. So in a sense, the expectation of what they should be deciding / how they feed that back is up to you as the leader to make sure that happens. And so get your external meetings down to one individual, one person on your team with a feedback loop, right, that actually comes back to the team. Okay, so we've talked about, you got your meeting participation with, you've gone through, you've purged your meetings, right? You've talked about maybe duplicate-ish meetings as well with the team meetings, right? And you talk about external meetings, kind of trimming down who it is there. Okay, and then the last piece is when it's coming to internal meetings, right? Making sure that the individuals participating, once again, have the right framework in that if they're not needed, that they have the ability to remove themselves, right? So once again, you want to foster that culture that a meeting that was effective is maybe no longer effective. And that starts with who's actually in that meeting. So empowering your team, right? And, empowering yourself to remove from a meeting, right? Now, some might say, hey, right in the middle of a meeting, they could get up and leave. That's a way you could go about it, and that's not necessarily bad, but that also means that you have to make sure that that level of trust and the level of why they would do that needs to be there. However, even if that's not the case, which it probably won't be for a lot of you, especially as new leaders, you do need to go in and have them to empower after the meeting, right? To come up to you and say, hey, for whatever reason, XYZ, I don't think that I'm providing value, nor am I getting value out of that meeting. I think my time would be better spent doing X. And as long as it makes sense, right, you need to give them that opportunity to prove that that is exactly what should be done. And you can always bring them back into that same meeting at another point. But having that thing will help them be critical and help drive you, because you will become blind too as well, because you might be getting value out of it and it might be necessary, but there are the other individuals there. So definitely empower them to remove themselves from those meetings. Okay, so we've talked about meeting participation as the first piece that helps drive the issue with saying yes and overcommitting yourself, right? The second one that you're gonna actually run into here is pretty much when it comes to the project workload. Specifically, if there's projects that are being carried over from the former leader or former team that it was under, right? So, and the big issue here, carryover. The big issue here is the fact that this project workload carryover is now going to conflict with any new projects that you might want to implement. And so while these might be great to carry forward, if we just constantly say yes to, hey, these are all the projects that that Bob was working on or Mary was working on, and we just give an emphatic yes as, okay, I got it, then we run into that problem that all of a sudden these other initiatives that might be more important are not able to be carried out. So while they might be important and there might be a time that you say, yes, I will, consider and I will look into this and give you a recommendation on what we should do with that, that's a better way to communicate that back to your leadership than it is to just say yes and try to go figure it out. Because ultimately, while that will feel good in the moment and it will make them feel like, oh yeah, they're here to help, long term, right, you're in that position to bring value and greater value, especially if you end up in a position that possibly was a underutilized, or maybe the previous individual, Bob and Mary, didn't do and live up to quite expectations. But if you have these new initiatives that you want to handle and that you don't actually able to ever implement, then very quickly, and you're chasing these around, they will then their opinion of you will start to change and feel more like the opinion that you had with previously with good old Bob and Mary. So accept the projects, accept the initiatives that are there, right? But however, go in and once again be very critical to what existing projects and initiatives are actually there versus the ones, these new project initiatives that you ultimately need to come and bring in. And so I would take those first month that you're on board and bring those in and be able to list out every project that you have, like I said, under this kind of an old initial list. And then I would pair it up with what new project initiatives you're looking at, either that are upcoming, that were already scheduled, or that you actually want to implement yourself. And ultimately, right, make hard cuts on these here or reformat these to kind of fall in line with your new projects and initiatives. And so if you don't do this, like I said, you will ultimately drown, right, from this overcommitment, right, and you will feel overwhelmed. So once you do this, right, the best way to go about communicating this back is to sort these out, right, write what they are, right, what the meaning is and the value of them, right, and honestly the return on investment of completing that project or initiative. And then pair that up with what you ultimately want to do with your new project initiatives here. If you take that framework and you provide that to your leadership on, this is what's currently going on in the projects that were turned over to me, and of these 10 projects, right, I think these 3 are the ones that will provide the most value. I think the other 7 on here are currently either not in scope of what I think we should be doing to meet our next goals, or I think we completely should do away with them because of X, Y, and Z. And these are the new projects that I have upcoming. And once you do that and you frame it like that and you give them, hey, I'm not just saying scrap all these projects. I've got my 3 here and I've got my 3 new ones here. I'm going to pair up to carry these forward. You will get much, much better feedback from both your own team, because once again, they might be dealing with this, right, previously, and they might feel like hurt that you're just getting rid of everything is how they're going to take it. And with your leadership knowing that okay, here, they have a plan to execute on this right here. Because if you don't, once again, you will either A, have a bunch of projects that just don't take the business anywhere, or you will never get to these new initiatives ultimately that you know will grow even better than these here. So ultimately, once again, look at your project workload, decide which ones you can meet. I would cut it off at 3. And then here, ultimately, right, I would pick up no more than 3 to start, even if your list is long, to kind of combine those together, the 3 to 3 rule here, and present those of, like I said, why we should be dropping or shifting these, how these new ones will better complement these here, and how ultimately it will get us to our ultimate goal here. Okay, so we've talked about your meeting participation. We've talked about, overcommitting to projects, right? Because once again, overcommitment, saying yes too much, is resulting in the fact that you are not able to provide as much value as you want. So, and the third thing that really individuals fall in as new leaders under this yes in the overcommitment part is when they do not have a clean break from old commitments. Now, we have all been there, right? We've all served on teams where, hey, you worked for team X, and team Y maybe, even that was a previous team, that you are still getting emails, any types of instant messages, you're maybe on update emails, you're still having lunch with so-and-so. Maybe if you work, especially in like some type of tech position or something that maybe you own a database, right? You might still be showing yourself maintaining that database. All these things here that are still following you to this new position, right? And like I said, for some, maybe it's followed you for the last 2 positions. And we have the problem of wanting to not just break free and really cut the, what's the term? I guess, really just cut the rope and, and really just break off from that team. There's 2 problems with it. One, right? You are hurting yourself, obviously, by having these things in the background. Even if you're keeping up with them, you feel right, and you don't feel like it tangibly is hurting you, you are, right? It is at least in that headspace, and it's affecting that, right? Which means you are not able to concentrate fully on what you're currently doing. Secondly, right, you are actually hurting the previous team that you are actually doing these things for. And by that, right, you are actually not giving them the ability to actually, in a sense, move on, right? Because one, once it's something that you're maintaining, they might not think about it, and therefore it kind of just happens. But if you're maintaining something, right, you're not growing something. And so while, say you own this process, or say you provide the answer to this and you're the subject matter expert, if it doesn't get cut off and doesn't actually just go to another person on their team, or they outsource, or they do away with it, whatever they're gonna do, then ultimately, right, you might maintain it okay, but it's not growing like it should. And in that case, right, it is hurting them. And so it's gonna feel good to be wanted, all those pieces, but ultimately, right, do the best for that team and do the best for yourself and your current team, and tell them, hey, if let's say you already have these here today, it's fine. You don't need to just start like throwing things out, but really tell them, hey, I've been maintaining this, or hey, I know you've been sending these messages, or we have these one-off meetings once a week to talk about this, but hey, at the end of this month, or hey, at the end of this week, I got to stop doing that. And tell them that, give them a deadline. You can tell them a little bit of why, but ultimately, right, tell them it's to help them, and then it's also to help your team as well. And once you do that, right, it's going to feel a little sticky. It's going to feel a little painful for them short term, but ultimately they're going to grow from it. You're going to grow from it, and it will help you build that muscle. And once again, it won't keep you in an overcommitted mode. Okay, so, right, being a new leader is very, very hard. And saying yes is the default of what you want to do, right? But that's going to lead to that overcommitment and that overwhelm. So once again, make sure you look at your meetings that you're participating in and your team, new teams participating in, right? Look at the current projects you have and initiatives, right? How are they being, evaluated? And then ultimately, right, cutting old commitments. If you don't do that, right, these are the 3 things will help you to really get into that piece there. And if you take each one of these, like we've talked about, and you present them to your leadership and to your own new direct team in the right way, which, like we said, is what is the value of this or not happening? What is the value of us getting rid of old projects with these new projects? And ultimately, right, what is the value of cutting off old communication, old processes that were tied still to you? Ultimately, right, you're going to be able to say yes to a lot more things and a lot more, revenue, profit, whatever your role is. Okay, so this is all great here, right? And this is truly matter. Now, a big problem that you might have with this here, and something that's hard to implement here, is when you actually lead former peers, right? It's a whole new ball game when we do that. Now, I did have a video right here that you can actually click on and explore right after this. That's actually going to go through that framework of how do you actually lead former peers, and not only lead them in a way and survive that transition, but actually thrive and actually use that to your advantage. So check that out there. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this here, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.